I woke up on the morning of October 14th with
Year of our Lord, 2021.
just utter shock to hear that Michael Nazir-Ali had converted to Roman Catholicism.
Yeah, former Anglican bishop.
Bishop of Rochester. And for cradle Catholics, I immediately thought...
I texted you at 7 a.m., I think. You're like, yeah, I heard.
I know. And like, for me, the first thing that came to my mind was like cradle Catholics. Like, I don't know if they even know why this is so significant or that it is. You know, they just see sort of like a picture of this like Protestant-looking minister, and you're like, okay, I guess, yeah, whatever. But this is so significant because you've had 3 bishops now in the last few months who have come into communion with Rome, and are specifically going to be a part of the personal ordinariate that Pope Benedict had set up for Anglican churches and clergy
to canonically come
into Roman Catholicism and to maintain a lot of their English patrimony. And then before that, a few years ago, you remember that Gavin Ashenden was another one. He was sort of the chaplain to the Queen. I mean, a huge voice. He had an Anglican podcast that everyone listened to.
He did. With Michael Nazir-Ali, he was somebody we looked up to when we were Anglicans because he was that voice calling out in the wilderness. That was this conservative bulwark in the Church of England. You felt like, okay, finally there's a bishop who
in England
who is deeply in love with Christ, who knows the scriptures, who knows the fathers, who's a great theologian, and he's speaking truth in love. And he was one of the founding members of GAFCON, which was what we were a part of. Our province in America, the Anglicans who left the Episcopal Church, came under the leadership of the bishops of the Global South, GAFCON. All these Anglicans who are conservative. Well, Nazir-Ali was part of getting them going. So here's a bishop from England who's getting the Global South together to come in some sort of loose communion, federation, we should say, to protect historic classical Anglicanism.
This is called the Anglican Realignment. For people who aren't familiar, it's basically because all of the Episcopal Church of the USA, the Church of England, and all these other churches of Anglican patrimony were going in this really strong, like progressive secularist direction.
The ordination of women to the priesthood, ordination of women bishops, blessing of same-sex couples. We had in America a publicly homosexual man named Bishop, Gene Robinson, named as bishop. So it was getting very ugly in the Episcopal world. And so then these other Anglican groups left that world and began to try and recreate and realign to save Anglicanism.
And apart from let's say the Archbishop of York or of Canterbury becoming Roman Catholic, I mean, Nazir-Ali would be like the second tier.
That's how significant.
He was actually a candidate for a while for the Archbishopric of Canterbury.
Apart from that, this is as significant of a conversion to Rome as you can get.
For sure.
In
but
church.
I wanted to actually look at his statement. So he did actually release a personal statement on it, and I read it, and I just resonated with it so much. It was just it was touching actually, because it reminded me of my own journey from Anglicanism to Roman Catholicism. So this is his statement. I believe that the Anglican desire to adhere to apostolic, patristic, and conciliar teaching can now be best maintained in the ordinariate. Provisions there to safeguard legitimate Anglican patrimony are very encouraging, and I believe that such patrimony, in its liturgy, approaches to biblical study, pastoral commitment to the community, methods of moral theology, and much else besides, has a great deal to offer the wider church.
See, one thing I'm pulling from that is that, Vatican II had this move to become more palatable to Protestants, okay? And there's negatives to that. We've seen the negatives to that for sure. What Nazir-Ali seems to be saying is that Benedict's creation of the ordinariate was the true expression of what Vatican II wanted. The true way to appeal to Protestants. And that is to bring them into the church's own liturgy, but have them keep and maintain
what was best.
the great things and what was absolutely best and orthodox about Anglicanism.
Yeah.
And the ordinariate provided that way, and it was this truer expression of what Vatican II had intended. And he's saying that Benedict basically got it right, and I agree that the ordinariate has served that purpose.
Yeah, and not only is Benedict getting it right from the position of Rome, talking to Anglicanism, but he's also, I can kind of see, Archbishop Michael Ramsey had written in the Anglican Spirit, and of course in his Gospel in the Catholic Church, his great work, but he actually had this view of Anglicanism where he said that it is by its very nature temporary.
Yeah, provisional.
It is provisional.
Yeah.
The ultimate goal of Anglicanism is full communion for all the churches, not just with Rome, but with even the East.
Yeah.
To reunite the churches.
Yeah, he saw if Anglicanism disappeared and dissipated into nothing, he said, well, that would mean that we're then
we were successful.
We were successful, and we have communed with each other again.
Yeah. So in one sense, you have the Benedict voice coming from Rome, saying there's a lot of good here that ought to be blessed and brought into the Catholic thing. And then you have from the other direction, Nazarali, kind of the Michael Ramsey thing that like, well, this is its ultimate goal, is to eventually get to full communion. Yeah. And in this post-Vatican II atmosphere, I know a lot of like traditionalist Catholics, like, of course, they have like the reservation about what happened in the fallout after the council and everything, and we can talk about that all day. But if you wanted to put a more positive spin on what has happened since the council, it has opened up the doors for something like this, for instance, because this would have been unthinkable in a pre-Vatican II Catholic
for the ordinary, you're saying, yeah,
of course, absolutely. Yeah. And when you go now and you look at,
but I would submit to you that the traditional Catholics view the ordinary, if they know of it, view the ordinary as a beautiful thing. Yeah. I know plenty of traditional Catholics who have gone to liturgies of the ordinary and said, "Wow, I didn't know that English vernacular masses could be done in such a way."
Yeah. And we had talked about this before. I don't remember when that was. We had talked about this where if you're
on a car ride home.
Yeah, I don't know. No, there's an episode where the Mass of the Ages, when we talked about how in Anglicanism there was this whole move after the Oxford movement and everything, where Anglicanism was actually getting very, very liturgically savvy and was translating a lot of these beautiful texts that originally were of Roman provenance. And so then Anglicans themselves became used to worshiping basically according to the Roman rite in beautiful English with great rites and ceremonies. And so that's kind of the brand of Anglicanism that very easily moved itself into Rome after the creation of the Ordinariate. And so from a traditionalist Catholic point, after you see what had happened in the abuses of what has come to be known as like the Novus Ordo and the abuses of it, you're looking at it as a traditionalist Catholic and you're like, in many ways, it's weird, but the Ordinariate is better preserving a lot of the rites and ceremonies of the Roman Rite better than we are, you know, which kind of brings us to an irony about all this, right? Because it seems like, especially recently with the synodal way that we see happening in Germany, and the synod and synodality,
right? That's going on literally currently and just kicked off.
Yeah.
We read it as former Anglicans. That the words that are being used and how Pope Francis explains what synodality is, we're actually hearing Anglicanism.
Yeah.
And we came out of that world, and Nazar Ali is coming out of that world.
Yeah.
Saying that if we're going to survive this thing, if we're going to survive this secular cultural Marxist assault on the church, the only place to survive it in has to be with Peter.
In Rome, yeah.
It has to be Rome. If it's not going to be Rome, it's not going to be anywhere else, because guess what? Anglicanism was the last, the bulwark of classical patristic Christianity outside of Rome, you could say, among the Protestants. And it is falling apart.
Yeah.
Because they went in this synodal way, and then that bishop has authority in that diocese, and that, you can't...
Try to one pope for 1,000.
Yeah, you can't... Exactly.
No.
They try to one pope for many, many popes. I hear that same language coming out of Rome now.
Yeah.
And that's what's frightening. And so the message here of Nazar Ali's coming into Rome, Catholics, wake up.
Yeah.
He's coming out of that kind of world, fighting progressivism, fighting cultural Marxism, these moves in the German Catholic Church to maybe we'll ordain women or bless
Bless
same-sex
unions.
unions, right? This is the world Michael Nazar Ali is coming out of.
Yeah.
And saying,
it's a hellhole.
Yeah. And I find in the ordinariate salvation from all of this.
Yeah, and the ultimate goal of what we were trying to accomplish in the first place. And that's how I felt when I was finally coming to the precipice. And I was kind of like, well, I was a postulant actually for Holy Orders in the Reformed Episcopal Church, which is a jurisdiction of the Anglican Church in North America, which is a part of this GAFCON,
Global South Conservative Anglican
this
movement.
Anglican Realignment movement. And I was having my postulancy under Archbishop Ray Sutton of the RDC. And it was during that time that in my local parish, beautiful parish, great people, even to this day, some of the best people I ever met, Nigerians who had been through much suffering. I mean, awesome.
Yeah.
But again, it was sort of like a time capsule. It was like trapped in the 16th century only. And I looked and I said, but there's been so much development in Anglicanism since then, positive development in our deepening of the understanding of the liturgy and everything. And I would like look over, just kind of glance over what the ordinariate was up to. And I was like, in a way, they're kind of doing the Anglican thing better than Anglicans are doing it. And especially when I would go outside of my parish, which is a very faithful, like 1662 prayer book per parish. And I would go out to, let's say, ACNA parish that was like kind of charismatic or something.
My parish, where I was going.
Yeah, well.
Where I was going. A much more, I don't know, low church evangelical kind of Anglican church.
Yeah, 1979 prayer book had like almost nothing to do, not even the classical Book of Common Prayer. Yeah. I mean, not even what the Cranmerian. I mean, it was completely
62.
Yeah, and so you were just like, what are we doing? And it was charismatic, like dancing around. What is going on? And then I'd look over again, and I would see the ordinariate, growing and doing the Anglican thing better there. And I was like, what exactly is Anglicanism at this point accomplishing that Rome isn't accomplishing already? And it was a gut check for me. And I thought to myself, like you said, with this culture, this new world order that's sort of pressing itself upon former Christendom, where are we going to go to win this battle? Is it really here? Like, am I in it right now? Is it Anglicanism that's really going to take on these cultural forces and win?
Because, of course, we saw it was losing while we were there.
Yeah.
We saw that our own conservative province was kicking the can down the road because they were ordaining women. But then some of the dioceses weren't. And we'll just exist together. Well,
so some sacraments will be invalid, but others will be valid.
And so it became quite confusing, and you stood, well, you're not fighting any battle then. Where we should be in the war.
Right.
Because we have these forces being pressed upon us from the secular world.
Yeah. Yeah. It was at that time that I just felt this, it was the Holy Spirit. I mean, it was just this immense call of our mother, the church, saying, come home.
That's the point.
We are in need of
we're in need of
you to come back, and not me, I'm saying you general, like we're in need of all you to come back to Mother Church, because Mother Church is in a bad way. Mother Church is struggling right now.
Well, we need you because what are the one things that Anglicans are good at?
He lists it. Yeah, exactly.
And you see in there, right?
Yeah. He says it's the Anglican desire to adhere to apostolic, patristic, and conciliar teaching, but here's the other parts of it. It's liturgy. The deepest study of the liturgy has been done really by Anglicans. The Oxford movement and beyond. Translations of the Fathers.
What I was going to pick out of that was the patristic.
Yeah.
The Anglicans were the first ones to really re-dive into the Fathers. Yep. And I'm not talking about during the Oxford movement. I'm talking about during the Reformation.
Yeah.
With somebody like Bishop John Jewel, who writes his treatise against Rome, calling on using the patristic fathers,
right,
saying you're not being this way, okay, to them, right? And of course we would disagree with how he interprets that, but he was pointing the church back to the fathers. That was Bishop John Jewel. That was Bishop Lancelot Andrews. That was Bishop Jeremy Taylor. These are all
John Cosin.
Cosin. These were all Anglicans who were rediscovering the fathers. And what's our experience? Our experience of Anglicanism was those Anglican fathers.
Yeah.
And those Anglican fathers lit a fire in us to go study the fathers.
Yeah.
And the Anglican divines led us to the patristic church.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are doing a Catholic channel for the church,
right,
talking about the earliest church fathers.
Yeah, yeah. And it also took you in steps where it sort of broke everything down and you had to rebuild it from the ground up.
Yes.
And slowly you're working through the fathers and you are building it, and you come to a point of like conciliarism, where it's like the councils and the consensus of the church is where you go for your interpretive method of the Bible. Like, what did the church believe everywhere, always, and by all, the Vincentian canon?
Yeah.
That becomes your method.
That was the Anglican call.
Yeah.
Where did the church always agree? And then whatever they agreed on, that's what we believe.
That's what we believe, exactly. Yeah. But then you come to a point where you realize that the church didn't always agree at any time, really, because you still have Orthodox out there who believe there's only 3 councils. You have Orthodox out there who believe there's 7. You have Catholics who believe there's 20.
But even the idea of where do you stop, though?
Mm-hmm.
So the Anglicanism is leading you to the fathers and agreement among the fathers, but where's it? Why do you stop in the year 500?
It's arbitrary.
It's an arbitrary stopping point.
Yeah.
And so that's why you go along this trail.
Yeah. And so that's why you get someone like Richard Field who said there's 7. There's 7 ecumenical councils, right? And so he stopped where the Orthodox stopped. But then the same arguments that Rome and the Orthodox have been having, where it's like, well, why would you press pause in the church's life there? Again, you just keep moving. But it was Anglicanism that sort of had that charism of a deep devotion to the patristic fathers while being Protestant. Mm-hmm. And that's where that becomes the entryway, the gateway.
And this was the gateway for St. John Henry Newman.
Yeah. And it's a reason why, actually, I think in our channel, why we've had so many Catholics actually interested. They're like, I've never really heard this stuff before on the father, because there hasn't been this deep emphasis on the early church fathers in Catholicism for quite some time, because we've been having a lot of Thomist debates, or we've had a lot of debates about the Vatican II debates, but it hasn't really been centered on the fathers, and that's where Pope Benedict comes in. Mm-hmm. And that's why Michael Nazarali really venerates Pope Benedict, because Benedict XVI was a patristic man.
Very patristic man.
But the other charisms, so it's not only that, it's a study of the liturgy, like we said, because again, it had to rebuild its liturgy from the ground up. So it starts going back to the earliest liturgies, and then through the Western history of the liturgy, the Sarum Rite, and so on and so forth. And so it has this deep understanding of the liturgy. But its approach is the biblical study. So again, this bibliocentrism, this emphasis on knowing your Bible, praying your Bible, pastoral commitment to the community, smaller parishes. Anglican churches tend to be smaller, and that's a good thing, because the pastor really does, in a way, become your father. Mm-hmm. This is one of those charisms, actually, in Protestant churches in general, but more so even in Anglican churches, because he really is father. Mm-hmm. In Catholic churches, we have a temptation to have these just massive congregations with one priest who's traveling among something.
Because unfortunately, sometimes with the shortage of priests, but yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
And then you have what he says, the methods of moral theology. And then much else besides, so he's listing out all these charisms of Anglicanism, and he's seeing that, well, I'm not lacking anything when I move into the ordinariate. I'm actually gaining more. Mm-hmm. So in one sense, it's a call to Catholics to say, don't go down this road, this synod and synodality thing that you're exploring. Don't go down this road. Don't decentralize what has taken centuries to build up and to strengthen and to produce Christendom.
Yeah.
And in the other direction, I would say, to former fellow Anglicans, what is it trying to accomplish anymore? Hasn't it exhausted its purpose in a way?
Yeah, and one of the ways it has exhausted its purpose is that because of the ordinariate, you now have something like this book.
Yeah.
You have Divine Worship Daily Office. Yeah. 1 volume, morning and evening prayer with the daytime prayers as well, in beautiful high liturgical English, given to us by the ordinariate, using the tradition of the Book of Common Prayer.
And the collects.
All the collects. A lot of the prayers kept in here are the prayers that you would find in the Old Latin.
Yeah.
The Old Latin collects are still in this. This still tells time based on the old way. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is preserving for you your Book of Common Prayer, your daily office. This is preserving for you the Benedictine tradition that was democratized in the Anglican Church. Everybody was praying morning prayer. You had to, because when you went to Mass, the normal Mass on Sunday for an Anglican in the 16th, 17th, 18th century was going to morning prayer first.
Yes.
That would lead into liturgy.
Yes.
And then everybody was meant to say the daily office. Mm-hmm. Well, now you have that in Rome.
Yeah.
You have one for you.
And that's a great strength. That's a huge strength of Anglicanism.
Well, I think this is the primary way that the ordinariate helps and quote unquote enriches the Roman Catholic Church is through the divine office.
Definitely, because when you're talking to a Roman Catholic and you say, "Hey, do you pray the divine office?" I mean, I'm serious. I like maybe 80% of the normal Catholic you talk to would not know what you meant. You talk to an Anglican, you say, "Do you pray the daily office?" They're like, "Yeah."
They know exactly what
you're talking about. And that is the ancient form. It's the most ancient form of prayer in the church. In fact, I would say it's the highest form of prayer in the church. Most Catholics, if I said, "What's the highest prayer?" they'd say the Rosary.
Yeah. Outside of the Mass, what's the highest form of prayer? It's actually the daily office. It's the Psalms. That's
which the Rosary was based off of. Mm-hmm. Like, it's because you can't get to have the time to pray the daily office, here's a Rosary. Mm-hmm. That's basically what it was. So,
and the Rosary developed out of the Psalms as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So right there, I think that's a great example of the great charism that the Ordinariate and Anglicanism is bringing. But when you go back to the Anglicans and say, what is it that there is still left to accomplish for Anglicanism? It's like, is it faith alone and apart from works that none may boast? It's like, well, you kind of gave that up when you started to venerate the Wesleys, who are Arminians. Yeah. Is it like a simplified form of the liturgy, where you take out all the hocus pocus and the signs of the cross? Well, I mean, if you're being honest with each other, the simplification of the liturgy after Vatican II has already happened as well. Mm-hmm. Rome gave basically almost everything that the original Anglican liturgists were asking for. So it's like, and then what is an emphasis on the fathers? Well, Roman Catholicism has also recovered that. Mm-hmm. Is it sort of a nuancing of the papacy? Rome did that, Lumen Gentium. So it's like, what are you waiting for? Come back home to your mother, because we need exactly you. Yeah. You who have been through the fight, the cultural fight. You're the people we need to hold the line.
Because you've seen where it leads when you cross the line.
Yeah. And whereas these Roman Catholics who grew up Roman Catholic never knew anything else are like, this is a great idea.
There's that tendency among cradle Catholics to say, oh, the church will always be here and the gates of hell will never prevail against it. Yeah, but it doesn't mean that the church can't fail. Yeah. For a time. It doesn't mean that the church can get tiny, very tiny, which is what Pope Benedict.
You said the quiet thing out loud.
Pope Benedict XVI has said and prophesied about that the church will become small. And Jesus says, when I come back, will I find faith on earth? Yeah. So ultimately the church will not fail. But are we about to embark upon a time when we will go underground, a great apostasy, and the church fails for a time? The truth will never go away, but maybe this is that time. Yeah. Or maybe with the help of Anglicans who've been in the fight for all these years, who have seen the end result, which is a horrid result, and are now coming back to Rome, help us in the fight. Yeah, exactly. And I don't want to sound triumphant about this conversion story of Nazarali as well. Like, I know what that felt like as an Anglican when you watched one of your best and brightest walk into Rome. Oh, like, yeah. Yeah, there goes another one. Like, it's a big morale blow, especially when these Anglicans are going through the absolute worst thing that you can go through. Well, they're being betrayed daily by their clergy and their hierarchy. And then you think of the martyrs. You think of the martyrs in Nigeria, the church. If you talk about the church of Nigeria, that means the Anglican church. Yeah. They're the majority church out there, millions of them, and hundreds all the time are being killed and persecuted. Yeah. They are a martyr church. And so you think about them too, that they're out there dying for the faith, and yet here's the hoity-toity Church of England or the Episcopalians, who are even worse, ruining the deposit of faith. Yeah. Even just the basic rule of faith, they're ruining. Yeah. That's a tragedy. And so, it's not triumphalism, it's come over here and help us win this battle that is taking place in the Western world. Yeah, and the thing is, in the past it was, come here to Rome and help us win this battle, but first you got to get rid of your Anglican stuff, Yeah. But that's not even the case anymore. It's like the best of what you have to offer has already been baptized by Rome. Like, you are free to be and develop exactly as you are into full communion with Rome. Mm-hmm. Come and fight the battle with us. I thought it'd be good for us to do a little comment on Michael Nazarali, because he was a huge hero. Yeah, welcome to Michael Nazarali to the church, and we pray for his continued ministry, because it's said that he will be now a priest in the ordinariate. Yeah, I'm super excited to have that voice. it's for us. It's like we lost him when we moved to Rome. It was a loss. It's like I lost him. He was a spiritual father.
Yeah.
And now God has given him back to us.
Yeah.
And believe me, you're going to see he's going to be a voice, a great Orthodox voice for not just Rome, but for the ordinariate.
Yeah.
To promote the ordinariate's mission in enriching the whole church.
Definitely.